how do you feel? Do you think that film festivals even have a position anymore? Now that I mean, you mentioned the idea of using like a Vimeo staff as an alternative to a film festival for a short, for instance. I think that all the platforms are things that would, for most festivals, would disqualify being in once you go to these platforms. And I'm wondering how relevant are film festivals even relevant anymore?
I mean, I think that they are more nimble than we give them credit for. You know, I think that we've seen a lot of complaining about like the New York Times not paying attention to alternative distribution. You know, that definitely, like the New York Times is behind the times on everything. But like, I do think that film festivals, you know, besides kind of like, you know, your Cannes and your NYFF and the New York Times version of film festival, I do think that they're very much, you know, open to, do you want to go live the same time? You know, Tribeca is doing this. I know at Sundance, what they did was that there was a crowdfunded film, and one of the incentives was if you were a backer, you can stream it at the same time that the people at Sundance are watching it. So, you know, that's Sundance. So I do think that they're more open to different premiere statuses and things like that. So, you know, it's always, I think, insofar as getting the rest of the non-self-selecting independent film community interested in it, I do think that film festivals kind of play a role, the regional ones, in getting people really excited about it.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I also think that the film festivals are curating bodies, and they bring together a selection of films each year and then show them and put their stamp of approval on them. Their stamp of approval will help you rise above a number of the other films that are out there, and in that kind of way it acts as somewhat of marketing for you as well. Certain filmmakers have more cachet than certain film festivals have more cachet than other film festivals, but just festival laurels on there sometimes work to transitioning someone to decide whether or not to press that button to buy the film or go to see that film.
And the press coverage
that
you might not get it if you don't have a New York and LA week-long release. You know, I do think that's good.
I think it should be, I mean, I think filmmakers should go into those festivals knowing what they should get out of that, and realize that it is a marketing opportunity, and that you can be, you know, collecting information and collecting an audience as you go along. And so if you know that going in, that you're marketing and it's a marketing tool, then it can be productive.
Yeah, you should think about what films from major distributors use festivals for. Usually they will have their premiere at a festival because they'll be able to get all the press and all the buzz around that. There's no reason why you guys can't do that at a festival as well, is galvanize the energy that is coming at a festival, start to build your audience leading up into that, maintain control of your direct sales as you're going, get a deal if you want to get a deal, don't get a deal, go live right after, whatever you want to do, as Jay said, just have that in mind as going into it, instead of just waiting to see who's going to knock on your door. Because coming from a position of strength now is the most important thing of going into a festival.
And I do know that I head up the streaming side of Student Spark. I actually don't head up the crowdfunding side, but I do know that in our meetings with various distributors, getting distributor films on our platform, I do know that they are looking to see those early audiences at festivals, how many backers you have on your crowdfunding platform. They are looking at those numbers. So, you know, it is something to
yeah.
A couple questions about Vimeo. You were saying, which I've heard many times, and I've actually negotiated to keep your rights to send a film to your website when you're dealing with a distributor, but I've only seen it in the context of selling DVDs to your website.
So you can sell directly. You can have a storefront where you're selling downloads or rentals from your website. You can carve that out. You can carve out using a certain platform. You can carve out using any one of our platforms. You can say, I've already made a deal here, and this is one thing that I want to maintain control of. Or you can hand over that possibility over to the distributor as part of their pool. This is the work that I've done, and use that as a leverage to get a better deal. Everything is possible.
And can I also ask, you were talking about this publicity fund. I don't remember how much you said the filmmaker would receive, but
It ranges from basically ranges from around $3,000 a month.
3,000 and up.
Yeah.
And how is that money used? Like, what
The-
is?
How's it used
Yes,
in
if I
terms of?
receive $5,000
Yeah.
publicity fund, is that like?
Well, we
ads?
work with you to figure out what is best for you. Actually, Courtney, who's sitting back over there, runs that part of our company, and so we would work with you to figure out what makes sense and what whether it makes sense to help you build out your website and your web presence. We have partners that we work with. Whether you want to, if your film is a cause-based film, whether you should work with a number of these other third parties that we know of, whether you want translations for your film, a number of different things along those lines. But it's really a matter of, all of us are here really because I think that we want to help filmmakers push their ideas forward. So in every single case of every single film, it's different. So for us to write we tried to write something that would be the catch-all for all filmmakers, never happens. And so, and all of you all the films are unique, and so they all have unique audiences, and so it's different with each one.
There's a lot of films out there, and we're all vying for audience, and like we mentioned earlier, we're all trying to beat out the background noise. I think that we can take a page from even bigger indie films. Is that I feel like films are always looking for an unfair advantage that they have to cut through all of that and reach an audience. And the tried and true method is like, well, you got to cast a star. This is what you always have to do, and it still works. I feel like in the alternative distribution world, kind of the new tried and true is to find an audience around an issue that your film brings up. It works really well with documentaries, and I'm starting to see it a lot with narrative films. And also, really smart thing, I'm curious if you guys have observed any other techniques that films are using to kind of find their unfair advantage that comes out of what the film itself is about, to connect to a community and kind of find their tribe.
Do you mind? I just have so two things on what you just said. One is that I kind of disagree with regards to the star being an unfair advantage on the audience side.
Yeah.
I do think that it's still unfortunately important on the financing side.
Oh.
I was at Sundance and I sat behind this filmmaker from the UK, and maybe it's different over in the UK, but and he was just kind of like talking about how he sat down with one of his investors and his film made his investor money, right? And he actually was like, I came in on time, under budget, and you got your money back free fall, this is great. And the investor was just kind of like, and this, I guess, is a pattern that's why he's venting, but the investor was just kind of like, yeah, but this other film I invested in, I got to walk the red carpet with so-and-so. So obviously it depends on who you're getting your financing from, but I do think that's still prevalent, more than for audiences, I think more on the financing side. And then talking a little bit more about the unfair advantage and what that might be, I think we talked a little bit about kind of testing that out early, like what you think, you think you might know what your audience is, but maybe test a few things to see where it's really resonating. But there was a film called Res that crowdfunded on our site. It's a narrative, and it takes place on a Native American reservation. And so the filmmaker was kind of like, this is my niche, I can go out to all these interest groups and but really what he found was, he had some sort of music over his pitch video, and it was just some rap song, and then suddenly a bunch of rap fans were really obsessed with his film. So it's kind of being nimble and being open to the different ideas about who your audience is.
Yeah, to jump on the star thing as well, like, how many of you have gone to a movie because of a star's been in it?
Not since I was, sorry, I know that wasn't to me, but like not since I was 16 and loved Leonardo DiCaprio.
So, I mean, I think that kind of explains it. In terms of things that change or that make you rise above, I think being nimble is the most important thing. And just being able to and wanting to experiment and to push different ideas as much as you say, as you were just saying. It's like things change so dramatically, so quickly, that there could be a tool that comes out that could change the way that you look at things. So one of the tools that I heard of a couple months ago that was really interesting about galvanizing audiences on Twitter, for example. There's a tool called Thunderclap. So basically you can get all these different people that want to help you out and said that they will do a tweet for you. You can get them all to download this app, hook into it. I mean, I'm not a salesperson for this app at all, so I don't know much about it, but all I know is that they can all link into this app at the same time, so you can press one button with one tweet and hit all those audiences at once. And what that will do is just raise the awareness, because you got to think of like people retweeting and using Twitter to market your film. You're only getting portions of that audience of every person that's there, and so that portion narrows down to different portions and narrows down to different portions of people. But the more you can hit at once, the higher likely that it will be retweeted or trend up. Yeah. So those Thunderclap. Yeah. So like for example, I didn't hear of that till I was at Sundance this year, and I was on a panel with someone, and a colleague of mine told me about it, and then all of a sudden 4 different filmmakers I talked to later on were all using it for their thing. So it's all about being aware of these tools that are out there, finding the tool that's right for you, and using that.
For us, it's a little bit different because, it translates all across the board. But for us, we try to give filmmakers a sense of this unique space that we occupy, because we are essentially renting out a theater and have that space for 2 hours. We can, about 70 to 80% of our screenings have some sort of event around it. And so whether that's a fundraiser, whether that is, we can put a bumper on before the film, and we can also, we have branding opportunities on the actual ticket because we are the box office. And so we try to create unique marketing opportunities for our films based on this unique space that we occupy. And so that for us is there's a lot of opportunity around that. And then also the story of crowdsourcing individual screenings is a story in itself. So aside from just getting press in a local community about a film, often we'll see that if a Girl Scout troop gets together and gets 150 tickets sold of a screening, that itself is a story. And so making the filmmakers aware of what's out there and utilizing every bit of our space is kind of how we approach that to kind of make that solid.
Can you also ask us about tools like dashboards?
Yeah, I'm very curious about that.
So we on Vimeo you get a pretty much as close to real time as we can give you statistics of how your film's doing, where it's being sold, where it's doing well. We are developing I'll tell you guys here, we are developing those tools every day. And so the stats dashboard that we're going to be releasing is going to be very significantly more detailed because of the marketplace and the fact that filmmakers need that. Data is really important for filmmakers, and it's really important for you to be nimble and be able to make decisions. So all of a sudden you might see that your film's being embedded on this one site, and then it starts to take off, and that's the #1 referred site for you. You might want to place ads on that site for your film because you know that more and more people are going there. So it's all about that.
Yeah, that's the same for us. We have a completely transparent dashboard. Whenever you're logged in, you can go to your film's page and see how it's doing. And we have Google Analytics, but we just hired a lead developer and are, trying our own.
And our we because the individual host of any of our screenings is involved in the marketing, we share all of that information with the filmmakers, and we encourage our filmmakers to interact. A lot of the incentive for these individuals, wherever they may be, to get involved and put in the work to champion an event is based on their ability to interact directly with the film and be a part of that. And so we provide a bunch of different ways to time manage your contact with these hosts, but all that information is handed over on a day-to-day basis to you.
I'm thinking about all the data that's available, and then I'm also thinking about like a bunch of producers and directors are being able to look at that data. Are you finding that the people that you're interacting from films are primarily filmmakers, or to what degree are people putting together teams of experts to help with these things? Like I know that this one distribution company that isn't so much a traditional distribution company as somebody that's just helping you fund a little bit of marketing and going out and trying to be an expert at going out and developing an audience with you on films. Are you finding that you're talking mostly to producers and directors, or to some degree to publicists or consultants or others?
But it's big ranges, but mostly filmmakers. I also heard there's a new role that a lot of films are getting, which is like producer of marketing and distribution. So someone's coming on board early and just planning those things out. You're shooting your film, and while you're editing your film, if there's a scene that was cut out of your film that was a character that you can be a self-encapsulated other film, make that film. Have all of the assets available to you, and as much of the assets as what you've done. Make sure you shoot behind the scenes and different things along the lines, because all of these things are marketing tools for you later, and all will exist in the digital market space that will help push those things further. So thinking about those kind of people that can help you on your crew is really important. And in terms of people we talk to, it runs a gamut. At the moment, it's mostly filmmakers. There are a number of people who are coming to film from a marketing side who are coming with really interesting kind of ideas, and that's interesting in that kind of way. I can talk about a case study, but I'll let this close.
No, and I just to add, I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer, but if you don't have a website for the film,
Yeah.
get one. And if you're not taking email addresses, you can build out Twitter followers and Facebook followers, and email is not sexy, but it is by far the most productive and effective way to reach your audience. And I mean, the conversion ratio that he's talking about, how that turns over to purchases, and getting people through these different stages and pages on the sites, email is king. And start taking them, and make sure that you're set up to capture that. We have tools that we provide filmmakers in pre-production to put on their site that we can start capturing that audience and communicate with that audience. And obviously, there's tons of creative ways to do that, but
Yeah, it's crucial.
I have seen the title social media producer
Yeah.
when credits roll now, and I do think that it's the kind of thing where filmmakers are bringing them on board as part of the crew. It's part of similar to how if you're doing it right, if you decide to go for a sales agent, you really make them part of the team, because anybody who's going to be speaking on the director's behalf should really be on the side of the team. And I think that's what you were talking about earlier about how if you go to a traditional distributor, and they don't know who your audience is, you know who your audience is. So you really need to bring those people in if you are going to go that route, who can be on your side and really speak for you.
And somebody mentioned in one of the earlier sessions, how do we do all this stuff if shouldn't we just be focusing on making films? And I think the answer is that in today's filmmaking, putting together a distribution team is just part of crew. It's just something that you have to put in place at the beginning.
And if you put the right person involved, you can then go and concentrate on making more films or evolving. But maintaining an email list and maintaining your audience can really shift. You can take those people from one project to another project and start to build it. And then you can start to look at filmmakers who understand this from the beginning, are starting to potentially just bypass lots of different traditional ways of fundraising, distribution, all of these things, because they have people that are interested in their work and will want to support that work and want to see more of that work, and that's interesting. And that can lead to self-sustaining careers.
Yeah, like following the band instead of
Yeah.
just like a hit song.
Yeah. I think there's actually a lot of great models in music for us to look to in terms of like what happens when your industry gets crazy disrupted and
Right.
how do you become like the new star. I'd love to throw it out to the group for questions, but I really like what you guys have to ask.
I was curious about your advice for shorts because you were saying there are different beasts and it's more about getting exposure than obviously like making money. So it's just really hard to navigate even a place to have a short be seen these days online. So I don't know. I just would be curious about your advice on where to go.
What kind of shorts do you make?
There.
Narrative shorts. And
Yeah.
are they longer form shorts? Or
Longish. This
Longish.
one I have is little sci-fi,
How long?
20 minutes.
Well, I mean, what would you like to? What would classify as success for you? I mean,
A
what would you?
large audience being able to see it.
Okay. So a large audience being able to see it then is a matter of you reaching out to the sci-fi communities and just actually promoting the film and putting it out for free, and then making sure it's seen by all of those people. Apply to sci-fi festivals. go to sci-fi blogs. Reach out to the editor. Try and figure out where you can place it to make sure that your view count goes up, but also making sure that the right people see it in terms of if there is a sales agent that specializes in it or an agent that you want to get attention from. It just depends. Are you trying to get as many people to see it, or are you trying to get someone to help you get to your next project? Understanding what you want to get out of it will help you decide where to put it. And if you just want to get exposure, then blast it out as many places as you can, and making sure that the right people know about it. Or maybe find someone who can potentially find someone that is direct message someone that you might think might be interested in it who has a large following on Twitter, and get them to post it into their Twitter feed. You never know what can happen in that kind of context. We've seen it a lot happen with, I'm sure we've all seen it with crowdfunding campaigns where someone tweets about something or someone puts it on Facebook and it just virally happens. That also can happen with films as well. And we've actually seen films on Vimeo on the free side, especially like sci-fi films, that have been staff picked, then picked up by development people in Hollywood, and then given a feature film just from the exposure on the site. So you never know what can happen and who can see it, but just making sure that it gets seen is the most important.
Another thing that occurs to me in terms of shorts is that people are always more ready to see like packages of shorts that are like roughly feature length, and that there's been some efforts to use that in alternate distribution models to have little mini like online short film festivals and whatever. But I wonder if you'd ever seen, for example, in Gather Films, what people were ever making short programs that they're sending out to theaters or anything. Yeah, and we haven't been approached by a ton of short filmmakers, and I think it's just because they probably see this, they don't see them fitting into that space, and that's not true. I mean, if you have an audience, we can facilitate that. Where we have done is we have certainly taken shorts and tied them to films, whether it's a relationship that they came in with a narrative or a doc that we played in front of and added that to the content, and those two filmmakers worked together to recoup the revenue, and so that's something that we've done before. But we certainly are open to that, and we are in the process of developing a number of series, and we're doing one with IndieWire, we're doing one with Kino Lorber, and kind of packaging a lot of titles for them and putting them out as a kind of a subscription model, and we certainly would be interested in doing that for shorts if the content's there. So.
Well, basically, if there are 5 short filmmakers in this room, and who all have audiences and want to, and their themes match up, you guys can all band together and create a package yourselves, and magnify, and all of your audiences combined will be stronger than your audience individually, and then to be able to push it out. So you could create that and do that right now. I mean, it's all about figuring that out in that way.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
20% of something is better than 100% of free, right?
yeah. So I mean, like, it just depends. I mean, for example, you could use our series functionality on our platform, have each one of the films be an episode, and then sell the whole bundle as one. If you want to do that, if that makes sense for you guys.
All right, I got one for you guys. Jeremy, you mentioned something about the project that was funded by Patagonia, and then Jay, you had said that you guys have space on the tickets for branding and what have you. I wish I could remember the film. Sometime last week I just read about a small indie that was like set in Maine and connected with a brand there to.
Yeah, Terror Trips, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Terror Trips.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. And
They're
they're
good.
showing a jet
Terror
too.
Trips.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there some other examples of, like, I'm not talking about like almost Hollywood films, but there's some other examples of like indie films experimenting with brands as a way either to gain money or exposure or both.
I just think that you're going to see that more and more and more. I think that that's an untapped resource in a way. I think there are a number of savvy brands that are interested in getting their message out there in different ways other than advertising. Lots of them are understand that advertising isn't the right way. On Vimeo's free side, we've worked with a number of different brands through our brand creative fund, where we enable filmmakers to have creative control using grant money to make films. But in the case of feature films and distribution, I think it's only the beginning, and I think that that's what attracted us to this Patagonia project the most, was just the fact that we had an idea, and this idea is going to be happening now. I mean, quite shortly. I mean, that on the receipts of every single purchase at a Patagonia store is going to be a discount code for the film. So when you think of a brand getting behind something onto that kind of level, it's really interesting to see what else you can do. Like, we're going to have point of sale postcards, downloads, all of these other kind of things that you will see. But another film that we worked on, and I know that Jay's working on it as well now, is called Everybody Street, which was one about street photography. It really focused on the photography community. It focused on all the artists that were behind it. How much time do we have?
We've got about at this moment.
Can I have 2 minutes to read a list of what they did?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So they were supposed to be part of a panel that I was at Hot Dogs and Distributing. We thought of different ways to entertain and sustain the audience and keep on making them aware of the VOD. The film was initially conceived as a short film, and then through the amazing pickup on Kickstarter, they converted it into a feature film. They did a pre-sale discounted price from the 1st of November to the 11th of November, and offering the fans a special price. And then they raised the price after that. They did a day and date with theatrical. They did exclusive clips or stills for different news outlets, including bonus clips for the film once you purchase the film, so extended interviews that would be there. They did a postcard series with all the different photographers, and on the back of each of the postcards was a discount code, and those postcard series were at theatrical and at different photo stores and in different places. They did a poster campaign with using the different iconic images from these street photographers, which we helped pay for, and they had the download information on that as well. We did a bunch of different support for them. They also gave us 20 different ads that we ran across the platform, and we looked at which ads were more successful and then tweaked the ads based off of what was more successful. What kind of advice would you give? She says, build a strategic plan for VOD before you release your trailer. They released their trailer and they didn't have a place for, they didn't have a website and they didn't have a place for people to go. And their trailer went huge and went ballistic. So they weren't able to capitalize on that, and that was one of their big learnings. And just the stories that you hear from direct distribution that you wouldn't normally hear. For example, the filmmaker heard from a kid in Pakistan, in the middle of rural Pakistan, that would have never had access to a book of Bruce Gilden's work or his photos, but was able to see it through Vimeo on demand, and was now able to understand the power of street photography, and it changed that kid's life. So those things are really interesting, and they are a company called All Day Every Day that put it out, and their whole thing is about building community around content, and that kind of thinking is incredibly important.
Yeah, we were just, to finish answering your question, we were just talking outside about how there are just new companies popping up left and right whose now sole purpose it is to connect brands with online content and online creators' channels. So I see it as kind of like the new agent, really.
Yeah.
So they exist.
Pretty amazing. That's how every street film is kind of an amazing film to look at and for filmmakers to see exactly what they're doing and emulate. On these other platforms, do you have on CD Spark sort of a poster child of here's somebody that's doing it right?
We had, a similar case would be there was this film called I Send You This Place. I think they premiered, it was a documentary, but it's really kind of a challenging film. It's an experimental documentary. It premiered at Full Frame. It's gorgeous, and fortunately, RIP Rerun Theater in Brooklyn, but fortunately it got selected to have a week long there. So they got its New York Times review, and they sold their own DVDs at the screening, and they went live on CD Spark at the same time. And I think that they have been, and they are the kinds of filmmakers where their film is experimental, and everything that they wanted to do surrounding that film also was an experiment. So it kind of was really fitting for them, and they've been really kind of, they were the ones who are coming up with these ideas. They were the ones who, they are their best innovators. So they have been really, they've asked us questions that have led us to tweak our analytics, and it was really out of necessity. They wanted to know those things, and we're in baby stages of a platform last year, and just great, we're the perfect example for this kind of thing. But they did the day and date, and they did all that stuff. But really, it was it's a beautiful film, and it takes place in Iceland. But it's about mental health. So they also had that kind of target audience. So.
Jay, same question for Gather. What is if we look at one film on Gather and say?
Well, our biggest success to date, we had the fourth highest grossing documentary of 2013, and that was Girl Rising, and they did 1.8 million. They did 1.6 million in just theatrical on-demand screenings, single screenings. They had a large team behind them, and they had CNN and Intel and a couple large groups that were participating in that, and they took 2 years to build that audience. And so I think on a smaller scale, a film that Jeremy and I both have worked on is The Anonymous People. And this was a filmmaker who made a documentary about the anonymity kind of aspect of recovery, drug and alcohol recovery. and when the film was picked up by Kino Lorber, but essentially was not going to do anything. They weren't going to do anything with it, maybe go to DVD. And we took it on because the filmmaker had his audience set up in such a way that he knew how many listservs he was going to be able to tap into through all these recovery organizations, and he knew how often they were going to support him via email blasts and tweets and Facebook posts. And he was he spent so much time building that, and then also developed his website around the Gathering platform. And to this date, we're still screening, selling out screenings of that film, even though it's moved on to VOD. And he's done about 300,000 gross for that film, and that's just one filmmaker. And he did this pretty much on his own. Yeah.
I do have to say that the films that have done the best on our streaming side are films that have crowdfunded in any way, shape, or form on any platform. We didn't even exist when these films were being made, so they were all on other platforms. But yeah, definitely
That they started their audience building
early and often.
Cool. Couple minutes left. Anybody have any specific questions about specific films? We have a panel of experts. Yeah, go ahead.
I have I don't know, I'm making a documentary, and basically, like, how do you know who to pitch to if you're still, it's not a clear-cut, like, advocacy film, it's personal, biographical. How am I supposed, you know what I mean? Like, how am I supposed to predict all the audiences? Like, I had an idea of some of the audiences.
You don't need to predict all of them. You just need to just start somewhere, and then you start to build. The ones you know, you start to build, and you ask them to help you build more. I mean, you could build an audience from just the small group that you know of right now, and if you got them all to bring in 10 more people, then you have 10 times that audience already. You know, the outlying cases that we're talking about are more because they're bigger in scale, and so you can get a sense of what the magnitude of what something could happen. But people are doing this at microcosm levels as well. You know, we're also seeing people who, for example, have massive followings on YouTube on their free side, and then deciding to shift over to our side and then start to sell work, but you transitioning that audience over. So there are so many different ways of doing it that it's do what's comfortable for you. Start to build what you know, and then see what happens. Who knows that there may be that one person in your audience, in your group that you know about, that might have access to 100,000 people that then could draw into you. I've seen it happen time and time and time again, where exposure of an idea or a concept or a film to someone else, either through crowdfunding or through any other means, will enable you to jump up another level that you wouldn't have expected. One other thing that I wanted to mention is, like, I kind of, when direct distribution on all of our levels started to come out, it reminded me and some of the people internally at Vimeo of, like, how when the App Store came out, how no one knew what the hell the App Store was going to do. They just knew there was a set rule of a set framework for you to sell directly to your audience, choose what price, and choose how small or how big the project was. And then 2 years later, there's the phrase, there's an app for that. And that was all creator driven. It was all the creators who were driving and creating that platform and making that explode. So I think that you guys should look at this time as a time of opportunity instead of not. You know, I mean, it is really a time of opportunity for you to maintain creative control over projects that you may not have been able to maintain if you had done a deal with a distributor or someone else who said you have to use this star, you have to do this, or you have to do this in order for us to, we know that this package will sell. Potentially it's time for other stories to come about and come out.
You know, I think a lot too about, like, it's now possible to do a feature film for $50,000, $30,000, $10,000. People do it for $2,000. You can build a business model that is profitable, and you don't have to necessarily be a giant giant film, and suddenly there are these tools that are available. It seems much more reachable to actually make back the budgets that we're spending and maybe build a different kind of business. Or hopefully we can pay each other more than bills. We have compliments left. Anybody else?
And I think it's interesting that just kind of speaking to that, the one thing that I've found about all these companies that are coming on, they're providing this alternative to distribution, are all filmmakers.
Yeah.
I mean, our company was started by filmmakers, and yeah. So it's not, we're not like saying market with, we understand what that means to your projects, and we understand that you want to keep your interest at heart, and so I think that's encouraging that all these companies are coming out from filmmakers who went through that same process.
So I'm wondering, are there any don'ts? Like, above all, do not do this if you're going to pursue alternative distribution.
Don't sign an overrides deal.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know how to phrase this as a don't. So do make sure that you have your music rights.
Yes.
Entirely outright. Don't just get the festival circuit, hope nobody sues, and then think the distributor is going to pay.
I would say that across the board for anything.
Yes.
All rights for your film, get it all signed off from day one. If you get it all signed off from day one, then you won't have any problems with potential distribution opportunities. Because there have been a number of people that haven't, and it's changed the course of the opportunity that they have.
I would just make sure that you understand clearly those windows that Jeremy was speaking about, and making sure that you look at each one of those as an opportunity that exists to drive, arm yourself with bargaining tools down the road, and so it's very important.
And I think don't think that you can't be on all of these platforms, on as many platforms as you possibly have the bandwidth to manage or the crew to manage. That's where your team comes in. The more outlets and access points your film has, the better it does on all of them.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
Guys, please join me in thanking our wonderful